safety.
It's Monday. Good morning. Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and we've got a big week ahead with the Illinois legislature coming back into session. They start fall veto session tomorrow. So we'll be looking at that all throughout the week and the things they're going to tackle. Everything from energy policy to another possible tax increase to pay for mass transit, to even addressing a veto that Governor J.B. Pritzker signed of a bill from a fellow Democrat. You've got Treasurer Michael Frerichs, who had a bill concerning nonprofits and can they invest their money in a pool and make money from that investment to help their nonprofit. So it's going to be an interesting veto session. Typically, veto sessions are just to deal with vetoes, but there's always issues to deal with in Illinois. So we'll be looking at a lot of that this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They're off the following week, but then they come back the last week of October, just before Halloween. So we've got tons to tackle throughout the week. Today, though, we're going to be getting to the latest in the saga over the National Guard and the Trump administration ordering the Guard, but court saying, no, you can't do that. So this is obviously going to be a pretty contentious issue as we move forward here with the prospects of public safety. All right, so it is Illinois in Focus Daily. I want to encourage you to go to the website, thecentersquare.com, where you can sign up for the newsletter, get the latest in your inbox each morning as we give you the headlines, not just from Illinois, but you can also go to thecentersquare.com and get the latest there as well, as you've got the ongoing conflict overseas in Gaza. That is clearly something that's top of mind for a lot of people, especially over in Washington, D.C., and the foreign policy issues that there are. But you can also see other headlines from across the country, from New York to Washington State and North Carolina. So get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com. All right, so we've got tons to tackle here. Stay tuned. One of the things we're also going to get to is the issue of Illinois finances, fiscal fallout. The Center Square has a investigative team that's been digging through just reams of information about pay for state employees, about pay for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the state of Illinois, what kinds of outcomes there have been, and all of this, of course, at the taxpayer's expense. So stay tuned. It's coming up here with Illinois in Focus Daily, each and every weekday morning with you live as we give you what you need to know here in the land of Lincoln. Good morning to those joining the chat room. It's fired up and we are live, so appreciate everybody checking in to get a daily dose of what's going on in the land of Lincoln with the Center Square and Illinois in Focus Daily.
Trump himself lies consistently, persistently. So do the MAGA Republicans that are backing him up or that are staying silent in this moment.
We're heading to Chicago because we want to save Chicago. Do you know they had over 4,000 people killed in Chicago over a short 4,000 people. And I have to watch this slob of a governor stand up and say that, well, everything's okay, we've got it under control. They had 4,000 people murdered over a very short period of time.
Governor J.B. Pritzker and President Donald Trump on Friday going back and forth about the issue of public safety in Chicago. This as over the weekend, the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals denied the Trump administration's emergency appeal. Good morning. It's Illinois in Focus Daily, each and every weekday morning with you. I'm Greg Bishop, editor of Illinois at the Center Square. And you can wake up with us here and get the headlines in your inbox. Go to thecentersquare.com and get the newsletter. All right, so let's take a look at Attorney General Kwame Raoul on X posting a statement regarding the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals order regarding deployment of National Guard in Illinois. He says the court's order today, and this was on Saturday, keeps the troops off the streets of Chicago, Broadview, or any other community in Illinois. This is a victory for our state. This is a victory for the state and local law enforcement who know their communities and who protect the rights of their communities to speak truth to power. So that's the Illinois Attorney General releasing that statement over the weekend. After Thursday, the federal district judge ruled in favor of the state to get a preliminary injunction, a temporary restraining order against the Trump administration from implementing the National Guard. And that was Thursday when that was issued. Friday, after the Trump administration appealed to the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals and putting an emergency motion to address this TRO, the federal appeals court said no, they're not going to do that. And what that means is, if you look at the U.S. Northern Command's official website here, and this is where they're updating operations such as when a president deploys the Guard, they give kind of operational updates. And the mission statements laid out and what they do for federal protection missions. And on Friday, they said the Title X National Guard soldiers in both Portland and Chicago are not conducting any operational activities at this time. Our soldiers are conducting planning and training, but not engaging in any federal protection missions, operational activities. We have no additional information to provide. That's after last week. They said that Texas National Guard and Illinois National Guard, 200 and 300 approximately. So you've got around 500 soldiers that were going to be put into the status of federal protection mission in Chicago and in Illinois. So that was last week, but as you can see, the court order obviously changing things for U.S. Northern Command. So here we are. We've got the issue of whether or not the Trump administration is going to be allowed to use the Guard. And it's right now in the appeals court, and we'll see what happens in the district court and just how fast this may go. Because of, I'm sure, the Trump administration talking about exigent circumstances, things happening on the ground. We're going to hear from the president, who spoke about this briefly Friday. But first, let's hear from the governor Friday morning. He held a news conference about schools and blue ribbons, and after the news conference took questions, and he said that he was happy about Thursday's federal district judge's order, saying that the Trump administration is not allowed to or doesn't have the justification to call in the National Guard.
I honestly was very hoping that we would see a result like this. As you know, it's a temporary restraining order, so there'll be a full-blown trial about what the outcome might be. I think the TRO will probably, or has been, appealed. So we'll see, but I'm pleased at the outcome, and I was hopeful that this might take place. So we do not, therefore, have Texas National Guard or Illinois National Guard or California National Guard, which are here, deployed anywhere in the city of Chicago or the state of Illinois.
So the order coming out, the Trump administration blocked from using the Guard in Illinois. And during that hearing Thursday, and our reporter Jim Talamonte was in there. If you caught the weekend edition of Illinois in Focus Daily, well, we were talking while Jim was in the lobby of the court. So he kind of spelled out how this played out in court. And when you read some of the other information out there about the state saying that the Trump administration has no justification, and some of the justification they've used, like protesters with guns clashing with federal officials, those charges have been dropped, and a variety of other circumstances that they said wasn't enough justification, and the judge sided with the state on that. Governor J.B. Pritzker said that the Trump administration is not credible, and he says that a federal judge in Chicago said that much.
Well, I think it's confirmatory. It's one more opinion, but an important one, a federal judge, about the truth or falsehoods that are put forward by the national administration. Trump himself lies consistently, persistently. So do the MAGA Republicans that are backing him up or that are staying silent in this moment. The lies should not stand. And I think having, again, an independent arbiter like a judge call it out for what it is. We have seen that ICE and CBP have lied when we've seen incidents of shootings, for example, in the city of Chicago. We've seen that twice now, where they tell a story that turns out later, thanks to our free press, we find out it was false. So that's just one example.
Now, Pritzker obviously has his perspective, and the Trump administration has their perspective. And one thing that you learn as a neutral reporter is police reports tell one side. There's always another side to a situation, and in particular, Pritzker's pointed to an instance where a federal official did open fire on a woman that allegedly was trying to use their vehicle as a weapon against the federal agent. And when it happened, DHS put out statements saying that the federal agent was dragged and sustained major injuries, but then some evidence came out to show that his leg was roughed up and he was dragged a little bit, but it wasn't as severe as maybe DHS had characterized it when it first happened. Then you had the other instances of some of the protesters found with firearms, essentially being not charged. So these types of things, you know, as they play out in courts, you're going to get all sides thrown out there. But obviously, this is still pending in courts. And Friday, President Donald Trump reiterated that he wants to make Chicago safe.
We're heading to Chicago because we want to save Chicago. Do you know they had over 4,000 people killed in Chicago over a short 4,000 people. And I have to watch this slob of a governor stand up and say that, well, everything's okay. We've got it under control. They had 4,000 people murdered over a very short period of time. There's not a city in the world, I don't believe, that can claim, you know, you hear so much about different, I won't, embarrass anybody, like by saying Mexico City or by saying anywhere in Afghanistan. There's no place like that. And then I have to listen to the mayor who's got a 5% approval rate, maybe less. He's an incompetent man. And the governor's an incompetent guy. He's a guy that was thrown out of his family business like a dog. And I know his family very well. And now he's a governor. And when I watch him trying to say that it's okay, we have crime under control, I lost 4,000 people over a very short period of time. I believe it's like 7,000 people were shot but didn't die. But 4,000 people died. And then he gets up and talks about how it's not a problem.
So the Trump administration clearly focused on public safety. But one thing that Governor Pritzker has pointed out, he says that Trump's talking about using the Guard for public safety, but the official filings say that Trump's using it to protect federal personnel and federal property. Doesn't that also work into public safety? I guess I'm just trying to understand the delineation there, right? I mean, public safety versus what public safety? Which bucket are you putting it in, with a sub-label of protecting federal assets or just in general terms, public safety? So obviously that's an ongoing debate that is going to continue. But as this plays out, you have video evidence all throughout the weekend showing, especially on Friday, protesters clashing not with federal officials. I'm sure there's still a lot of that out there, but you've got video showing protesters clashing with the Illinois State Police. This is just some of the on-the-ground stuff from the streamers out there. BG on the Scene was there, obviously. You've got others, freedomnews.tv, showing Illinois State Police clashing with protesters. And again, this is not federal officials. These are local police clashing with protesters in Broadview. Governor J.B. Pritzker, he talked about this issue he has concerns with, and that is protests that are peaceful, he says, having agitators or what some would consider provocateurs getting involved in the protests. And Pritzker warned against that.
I only have concern if peaceful protesters are somehow disrupted by people who are not being peaceful. or by ICE. And so that's why we've got Illinois State Police, why we've got local police, why we've got county sheriffs out there. We're trying to protect the protesters, the peaceful protesters. Anybody who isn't peaceful, is going to be arrested. But I encourage people to peacefully protest. I have been a peaceful protester many times in my life. I think this is a good thing. It's very American to do it. And so I encourage it. I think it's a good thing. And I think that the results of it will be, hopefully, that a lot of elected officials especially will hear them and act upon their voices.
Again, we'll continue to monitor this as it unfolds, especially with whatever reaction we get from Illinois legislators who come back to session Tuesday. So it's a lot going on here with Illinois, and that's why you need to wake up with us here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com and get this podcast wherever you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus Daily. Stand by as we prepare a live guest for Illinois in Focus. Illinois has among the highest tax rates in the country. When you look at everything from property taxes being number one, you've got gas taxes being number two, highest in the Midwest, and Illinois has a stagnant population, if not a decreasing population. How can you possibly keep that going? It's something that a lot of policymakers scratch their heads about, especially with the ongoing legacy debt that Illinois has. But with the Center Square, we've got an investigative team that's digging into these numbers across the spectrum of different types of spending. With a new series you'll be able to find on a regular occasion. Illinois, it's right there at the Center Square. Get to Fiscal Fallout. You'll see some of these stories. Joining us this morning with Illinois in Focus Daily is Jared Strong, one of the investigative reporters here with the Center Square. I'm Greg Bishop. Jared, thanks for taking time with us this morning. You guys have been doing a lot of digging into some fascinating documents and numbers, and well, quite frankly, it's rather wild what you guys are finding out with the Fiscal Fallout series. Break it down for us. Oh, Jared, I apologize. I do this all the time. You are now unmuted. It's 2025, no longer 2020, so you're off mute now.
It happens all the time, man. Good morning to you. Yeah, so we've been digging into a bunch of different things. Most recently, given the what looks to be impending budget cuts for next year, one of the latest things we dug into was government employee salaries and how they rank nationally. And we found that, Illinois is in the top 5 for compensation for state government workers. As a side note, it's also top 5 for pay for state lawmakers. But compare that to the cost of living for Illinois, which is more middling, depending on which analysis you're looking at. There are a couple that say Illinois ranks 19th or 24th for the highest level of cost of living. So there's some disparity there. The Illinois Policy Institute crunched the numbers on this. They found that government jobs that are unionized are outpacing private sector jobs that are comparable for salary. Their analysis found that, just in recent years, government salaries have increased 57% faster than private sector jobs. So again, against this backdrop it's important because Governor Pritzker recently said, as you reported, that he'd be seeking 4% more or less across the board spending cuts to cope with an expected downturn in state revenues. There's also, as you've reported, a vast issue with the state's pension fund and how chronically underfunded it's been. So we're digging into a number of things.
Jared Strong joining us, and he's part of an investigative team with the Center Square, and they're looking at stuff all across the country. And here in Illinois, obviously, we've got a lot of issues. Jared, I've been reporting on the ground for 12 years here, and it's pretty wild to see just how much spending has gone on in the state, especially post-COVID during the Pritzker administration. And that's one of the first things you guys put together was looking at those numbers over the past 7 years and just the dramatic increase. And people can find that Fiscal Fallout story, which was published literally, as you mentioned, 24 hours or so before the governor announced, hey, we got to do 4% across the board to find some savings and some reserves. And he blamed it on the Trump administration, pointing at, the president looking to stop waste, fraud, and abuse with Medicaid and other safety net programs like SNAP, for instance, things that could cost Illinois hundreds of millions of dollars if it doesn't get its error rate down, right? So there's a ton of issues, and obviously you guys are going to continue to dig into the fiscal fallout of all of this. But you mentioned the state salary pay story that you guys got out Friday, and I encourage people to go to thecentersquare.com and read that and share that. But that just stacks on top of something else you guys looked into concerning diversity, equity, and inclusion, and just how many tax dollars in the state of Illinois are going to these types of programs. And you asked and answered, I think, an important question. I don't know if we have the full scope yet, but was there any positive net benefit to the taxpayer for how much money was spent on those programs?
Well, I mean, it is early, but based on the numbers we've seen so far, no, the relatively newly created Commission on Equity and Inclusion has actually sort of regressed from its overall goal. Now, this commission was created in 2022 as a result of complaints, largely, I believe, from business owners who are businesses that are majority owned by racial minorities, women, people with disabilities. The state has long had a goal for awarding those types of businesses a certain percentage of the overall dollars that are available through state contracts. For a long time, it was 20%. And under a different Illinois State Department, at least on paper, it was meeting its goals for a number of years. Well, based on these complaints that this wasn't good enough, the state lawmakers increased that goal to 30% and created a new branch of the government, the Commission on Equity and Inclusion, to get Illinois closer to that 30% or exceed it. The issue that we found is that there's been a backslide in the percent or how close they are to that goal. Again, under previous department's oversight, they'd exceeded 20%, they'd exceeded 30%. Now we're sitting at about 4%. And the commission has not responded to multiple requests to comment about this situation. It appears from their data that they've identified more contracts that should be available to these businesses to be used in that calculation. So that's part of it. But we don't exactly know where they're at. We just know the numbers are down. And so one thing that we found as we've been reporting this is that this commission it's headed by a 7-member board. All of them are objectively highly paid. They all make more than $150,000 a year. So that's 7 people. And underneath them, there's a staff of about 30, and it's growing, of people who are also, making on average about $100,000 a year or more. So it represents an overall small amount of the budget, but when you're looking at cutting 4% across the board, every penny counts. So we're looking at stuff like this, and we're going to continue to look into spending like this because, for instance, these commissioners, they make 150 more than $150,000 a year. They have monthly meetings that they're supposed to attend, for that are scheduled to go for 2 hours. But there's nothing in the statute, unlike for other appointed paid positions like this, there's nothing in the statute that prevents those people from having other jobs. There's nothing that says this should be your full-time focus. So we're going to see what those folks are doing, when they're not doing their work for the government and go from there.
Jared Strong with us here with Illinois in Focus Daily, an investigative reporter for the Center Square, delving into the fiscal fallout of Illinois tax dollars and where those are going. And as you talked about the DEI hiring and the contracting that they're trying to get out to certain businesses and the cost to the taxpayer being in the millions of dollars for this, plus the six-figure salaries going to these commissioners. Again, that just stacks up with what you're seeing in your latest reports about state employees salaries, and you list the highest paid state employees in this story. How much is that? And then how much are lawmakers making in the state of Illinois for what is really, you look at how many days they're in session, some may consider that a part-time job because, Jared, I think they work maybe 50 plus days in the state legislature actually being at the Capitol.
Yeah, I think it might be 70 days, something like that. But yeah, they just gave themselves raises and they're making everyone, the base salary is just shy of $100,000 a year. And if you're in some, a leadership position that could easily swell by a couple tens of thousands of dollars. But yeah, we looked at state government salaries. If you want to look at overall who's making the most money, who's technically paid by the state, you're talking about college football coaches who are making millions of dollars a year. But as far as state government employees go, the top two, and actually three of the top 10, go to executives of the teachers' retirement system. They're in charge of managing the investments for the pension system for those folks. The executive director is making $518,000 a year. The deputy chief investment officer is making $398,000. And then beyond that are, physicians. They make up most of the rest of the top 20 salaries. Folks who work for, especially administrators, working for the Department of Corrections and Human Services. They're making upwards of $350,000. The top physicians are making more than $300,000. And then a heavy portion of the number of slots for the next like hundreds of highest paid slots go to judges. Supreme Court justices are making about 300 grand a year. And then there's appellate court judges that are close to that, and the district court judges are making $245,000. And I mean, and I'm not joking, there are hundreds of them. And then beyond that, we looked at what the top elected officials are making. Secretary of State, Attorney General, both making 212,000, Treasurer at 186,000. So we're looking where all of the pennies are spent in Illinois to as budget cuts are floated and as state lawmakers grapple with how to solve the state's tremendous pension crisis.
Jared Strong, he is a investigative reporter with the Center Square. I am so excited to see the work you guys are going to do, not just here in Illinois, but across the country with your team. And you've got a pretty solid leadership there to keep that train going with some incredible reports. What are you guys going to be looking at next?
Well, I mean, I'm going to keep digging on this Commission on Equity and Inclusion issue, and we're examining everything. I mean, this commission is a good example of that. Again, their portion of the overall budget's about, I think it's $7.3 million a year. That's not much when you compare it to the overall discretionary spending that state lawmakers have approved of about $55 billion. for this current budget year. But we're looking everywhere. So, we rely on the reporting, Greg, that you do every day. And, if folks out there have concerns about anything, reach out to us. Tips are always welcome.
I tell you what, Jared, I mean, the audience here obviously is with us each and every weekday morning, and I get plenty of tips coming in. So you're going to see a lot of forwards and a lot of other things coming your way. Greatly appreciate you taking the time with us this morning. We'll definitely be talking again soon because this is important stuff that the taxpayers of Illinois need to know about. So appreciate your work.
Yeah, you and everybody else have a great week.
All right, it is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning. Get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com. Sign up for the newsletter and wake up with us here for Illinois in Focus Daily. All right, plenty more this week. We've got tons to tackle, so appreciate you guys, and be sure to wake up with us here, grab your coffee, and join us for a cup as we break down what's going on in the land of Lincoln. One thing I forgot to mention at the top of the show, Mike Madigan going to prison today, right? It's October 13th, 7.5 years. The former Illinois House Speaker found guilty on corruption charges. He has to report to prison today. And that's after an appeal to stay out of prison. Pending appeal didn't make it across any kind of line. So Madigan has to show up to prison today. That'll be interesting. We'll hear a little bit more about that, obviously, this week with legislators back in session for fall veto session. You got ethics that are going to be on the minds of Republicans, especially with Madigan going to prison. But I think the legislature is more focused on energy policies and helping prop up wind, solar, battery storage. While consumers have increased costs, could possibly see discussion about the mass transit fiscal cliff, though the $740,000 million dollars is actually down to about, $300 million? So how much of that going to play into this? So there's tons for us to get to this week, let alone all of the back and forth about public safety in Chicago with the ongoing courts battle over using the guard in places like Chicago and elsewhere. All right, so again, tons to tackle. I appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning with Illinois in Focus Daily.